The silence before the storm. The sky burned violet and gold, streaked with the jagged silhouettes of jagged rock spires that pierced the clouds like broken teeth. On the surface of Zareth 4, a planet thought uninhabitable by most species, life thrived stubbornly in ways no human textbook could explain. Its forests were thick with phosphorescent vines that pulsed faintly with every heartbeat of the planet, and its rivers glimmered with metallic currents that whispered as they flowed. The world was beautiful, terrifying, and alive, but today it was eerily silent. Lieutenant Mara Quinn crouched on the edge of a ridge, her boots sinking slightly into the iridescent soil. She was breathing hard, not from the climb, but from the anticipation. Her heart hammered against her chest, as if warning her, and yet the warning felt almost too late. In the distance, the alien outpost she had been monitoring for months shimmered under the dying sunlight. Its structures were elegant, organic in shape, woven from living metal and translucent crystal, yet empty. Abandoned, or worse, destroyed. Her communicator buzzed. She ignored it at first, letting the hum of the wind and the faint thrum of the planet's energy sharpen her senses. When she finally answered, the voice on the other end was quiet but panicked. "Mara, you're not going to believe this. The Kaithari fleet, it's gone. Just gone." Mara's jaw tightened. "Gone how?" Her voice was calm, but inside, a storm was building. All communications dead. No distress signals. Nothing. It's like they vanished. She swallowed hard, scanning the horizon. The Kaithari were one of the most disciplined civilizations in the sector, a species that prided itself on control, coordination, and precision. For their fleet to vanish entirely without a trace was unthinkable. Mara's hand hovered over the sidearm at her hip. Her experience in chaos told her one thing. Something was coming. Something big. A rustling from behind made her spin. A creature stepped out from the shadows, tall and lithe, with scales that reflected the dying sunlight like liquid metal. Its eyes were wide, almost human in their sorrow. "You shouldn't be here," the creature said, in a voice that hummed through the air. Mara studied it. It was a Kaithari scout, or at least, it looked like one. "And yet here I am," she replied, not lowering her hand. "Name's Mara Quinn. I don't think your fleet is going to rescue you, so I'm asking questions." The scout's gaze fell. "We expected rescue, but it seems—" It paused, trembling. "The Deathworlders have moved faster than anyone thought possible." Mara felt a chill run down her spine. The Deathworlders were a whispered legend among interstellar explorers, a human colony known only through stories and old intelligence logs. No one alive in the galaxy expected them to be more than a myth, a primitive species hardened on planets that could kill unprepared life in hours. Yet here, in the silent emptiness of Zareth the Fourth, Mara knew the stories were not only true, they were horrifyingly accurate. "Deathworlders?" she repeated. "You mean humans?" The scout's scales dimmed, almost fading to gray. "Yes, humans, the survivors. They didn't come for us to save us." Mara's mind raced. She had grown up on stories of human resilience, ingenuity, and ferocity. But this, the scale of what the scout hinted at, was beyond anything she could have imagined. She crouched lower, scanning the horizon again. The wind shifted, carrying a metallic scent that made her stomach churn. There on the ridge, across the valley, a shadow moved. Too large for a single creature. Too deliberate for wildlife. Her communicator buzzed again. This time she let it ring. Then she spoke to the scout. "Tell me everything. Every detail about the Deathworlders' fleet. How many? What's their speed? Weapons?" "They didn't use weapons. Not at first. They're ships. They adapt. They learn from everything. The Kaithari cannot predict them. They come from worlds that kill anything soft, anything weak. And yet, They survive? Always, Mara swallowed again. The stories were true. Humanity's old nickname Deathworlders was not a warning. It was a prophecy. A sudden tremor shook. The ground, small at first, then growing with an almost sentient rhythm. The scout froze, the metallic scales along its spine rising. Mara's boots slipped slightly in the iridescent soil. "They are here," the scout whispered. Mara turned, fully, her eyes narrowing. Far across the valley, in the hazy twilight, a line of shadows emerged, ships, enormous and jagged, but unmistakably alive. Unlike the sleek alien architecture she had seen throughout her life, these vessels were brutal, designed for survival and war. Every one of them bristled with human ingenuity, modular structures, adaptive armor, and engines that whispered promise of speed no Caithari vessel could match. There. "Human," Mara breathed. The scout hissed. "They are more than that. They are the children of worlds that were supposed to die. And now they come for retribution." The first wave of smaller craft descended, slicing through Zereth IV's atmosphere with eerie precision. Mara noticed something that made her chest tighten. None of them fired. No lasers, no plasma bolts, no indiscriminate destruction. They moved with a purpose, calculated, almost surgical. "They expect a fight?" Mara asked, though the answer seemed obvious. The scout shook its head. "They do not expect us. They do not fear us. They expect only truth and judgment." Mara's mind raced. Judgment. What did that mean for the Caithari? For herself? She had spent years embedded among these aliens, earning trust, learning languages, building fragile bridges of cooperation. Could she survive this? Could anyone? Then, in a sudden flash, one of the human ships twisted in midair, its hull opening. Like a flower of steel, revealing engines within, it glowed with a soft green light. The light pulsed, then shot toward the valley in a focused beam. Trees were vaporized, rocks melted, and yet, oddly, nothing else moved. The beam avoided the scout and Mara. What are they doing?" Mara shouted, her voice nearly lost. In the roar of energy, "They are testing," a scout said. "They test everything. Nothing survives unmeasured. Everything must prove it is worthy to exist." A tremor shook Mara's hands. Worthy to exist. She had spent her life proving she belonged in a galaxy that doubted humans, a species whispered about in fear and awe. And now, in this alien world, facing the living embodiment of that fear, she realized something. The Deathworlders were not here to rescue. They were here to decide the fate of everyone. Her heart pounded, her mind screamed, and yet, deep down, a spark of human defiance lit within her. If the Deathworlders were coming for judgment, then Mara Quinn, flawed, battered, and resourceful, would make sure humanity's compassion, its ingenuity, its unpredictability, its unbreakable will was known before any judgment was passed. She drew a deep breath, adjusted her weapons, and stepped forward. "Then let's show them who we are," she said. And in that instant, the first human dreadnought broke through the clouds, its hull gleaming, weapons silent, engines humming with lethal promise. The scout froze, scales gleaming faintly in fear. "They're not waiting," it whispered. Mara's eyes narrowed. "No, they're coming for everything." The wind screamed across Zereth 4 as the ground trembled beneath the approaching fleet. And somewhere deep inside Mara, the pulse of humanity, the reckless, brilliant, unyielding heart beat faster than ever. The first salvo of the unknown was about to begin. Asterisk, judgment, and fire. Ground trembled with every pulse of the human dreadnoughts. Engines. Mara Quinn pressed herself against the ridge, eyes scanning the advancing fleet. Each ship was a masterpiece of brutal efficiency, angular, modular, and alive with subtle movement, as if the metal itself had a heartbeat. They were silent killers, but not yet aggressive. Their intent was inscrutable. Why haven't they attacked? Mara whispered, more to herself than to the scout beside her. They are humans. The scout replied, its voice tight with fear. They do not strike blindly. They assess. Mara's mind raced. Assess? What kind of species comes to the edge of annihilation and only observes first? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She had trained for ambushes, raids, and pitched battles, but this was different. Suddenly, a low hum grew louder from the fleet. The air vibrated, and Mara's communicator crackled with static. Then a voice, unmistakably human, spoke across all frequencies simultaneously. Cathari inhabitants of Zerath 4, and any others listening, we have arrived. We do not come as saviors. We do not come as conquerors. We come to understand, to judge. Step forward if you wish to survive. Mara felt the hairs on her neck rise. The voice was calm, almost gentle, but carried an undeniable authority. There was no fear in it, only certainty. The scout trembled, its metallic scales flashing nervously. They know everything. They have tracked your presence here, your communications, your alliances. They know the Caithari secrets. Mara frowned. Then they're not just here to judge the Caithari. They're here to see me. Asterisk, the thought hit her like a cold wave. Every human tale she had grown up with of ingenuity, survival, and adaptability was true. They remembered, they tracked, and they understood. And now, Mara, a single human among aliens, was caught between two forces she barely comprehended. From the ridge across the valley, the first human ship descended lower. A hatch opened, and Mara caught her breath. A figure appeared on a landing platform, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit of armor that was functional but elegant, clearly human, and exuding confidence and command. Asterisk. It raised one hand, palm outward, a gesture of truce, yet unyielding authority. Mara's instincts screamed caution. Human, she muttered under her breath. Finally, someone who can explain what's happening. The scout hissed. Do not approach. It may be a trap. Mara weighed her options, heart hammering. She had come this far, surviving impossible odds among alien species. Standing down now felt impossible. Taking a step forward, she raised her own hand and called out, I am Mara Quinn, human operative embedded with the Caithari. I mean no threat. I wish to speak. The figure tilted its head. Quinn, the voice carried clearly across the valley. We've been expecting you. Mara froze. Expecting me? Humans never forget, the figure replied, and we always keep our records. We know who helped the Caithari and who hindered them. You are not in danger yet, but you must choose help us or stand aside. The ground trembled again, this time violently. From behind, shadows moved Caithari ships, damaged but repairing themselves, rising slowly like wounded beasts. Mara realized the aliens were confused, afraid, yet ready to defend if needed. I don't understand. Why are you here? What do you want? She asked, voice tight. The human stepped closer to the edge of the landing platform. We came for judgment, but judgment is not always punishment. We assess, we test, and we offer a chance for survival if the species proves its worth. Mara's stomach twisted. Worth, survival, everything she had worked for, every alliance she had nurtured, now boiled down to a test set by humans whose very existence was myth to the galaxy. A sudden roar split the valley. Mara turned. Smaller ships from the human fleet were diving toward the Caithari settlements, not attacking, but scanning, probing, and mapping with precision that bordered on unnatural. Trees and structures glowed briefly, as if measured, analyzed. There, measuring everything, the scout whispered. Even life forms. Nothing escapes them. Mara clenched her fists. Then we show them what we can do. I've survived Deathworlds. I've fixed ships, healed soldiers, negotiated peace treaties and systems that thought humans were extinct. I can help. I must help. The scout's eyes widened. You dare to confront the Deathworlders? Yes, Mara said firmly. Because someone has to speak for the Caithari, and for everyone who can't understand their way of thinking. Someone has to show them that we can adapt, and that compassion isn't weakness. The human figure's eyes gleamed as if reading her thoughts. Good, it said. Then step forward. Show your skill. Show your worth. Mara took a deep breath, sprinting down the ridge toward the valley floor, the scout following nervously. Every step shook the ground beneath them. The human fleet observed silently, their presence both terrifying and oddly comforting. Suddenly, a flash of light struck the ground nearby. Mara hit the dirt instinctively, heart racing. Rocks melted where the energy touched. She realized with horror that the human scanning was not harmless. They tested resilience as much as intelligence. A misstep, and even an ally could perish. She rose again, more cautiously, eyes fixed on the figure. I'm ready, she shouted. A hum vibrated through the valley. Then, from the scout's trembling form, a warning hiss. Not just your worth is tested. They measure trust, and the Caithari may not survive the test. Mara's blood ran cold. Trust, among species who had already doubted humans? Among a civilization unprepared for the Deathworlders' arrival? She understood the stakes were no longer theoretical. They were immediate, tangible, and deadly. She reached the valley floor. The first human scout ship hovered low, engines humming softly. A beam of light enveloped her and the scout, lifting them briefly off the ground. Mara's stomach lurched. You are being scanned, the human voice sighed, calm and omnipresent. Your skills, your choices, your character, we record everything. Fail, and there is no second chance. Succeed, and survival is earned. Mara's hands trembled. This was more than survival. This was a trial not just for herself, but for the Caithari, for every species in the valley, for every alliance humanity had ever been part of. She swallowed. I understand, she said, trying to steady her voice. Then, let's begin. A sudden explosion shook the valley. One of the Caithari settlements erupted in fire, not from the humans, but from sabotage. Mara's mind froze. Someone had used the arrival of the Deathworlders as a cover to strike. And now, she realized with a sickening clarity, the trial had already begun. The first trial flames licked the crystalline towers of the Caithari settlement, casting jagged shadows across the valley. Mara Quinn's heart hammered as she sprinted toward the destruction, the scout flitting anxiously beside her. The air shimmered with heat and the faint hum of the hovering human fleet above. Every instinct screamed danger, yet Mara pressed on. They're testing us, the scout hissed. Not just you, human. All of us, the humans. They calculate everything, every move, every reaction. Mara's gaze darted across the burning settlement. Civilians, Caithari engineers, children, and scholars scrambled, panicked. Structures that had stood for centuries crumbled under the heat. Mara's hands ached to help, but she had learned long ago that brute strength alone would not suffice. Strategy, cunning, and improvisation were her tools. Listen, she said, her voice firm. We survive by thinking, not by running. Cover me while I reach the energy hub. The scout tilted its head. The hub? That is central. Dangerous. Even a child of Deathworld could be harmed there. Mara ignored the warning. Then we make sure no one dies. Ready? The scout flared its scales, signaling agreement. Together, they dashed through the chaos, dodging, collapsing walkways and streams of molten metal. Mara's mind raced, calculating paths, makeshift barriers, and potential traps. Every step was a test. Every second weighed against the fleet's invisible evaluation. When they reached the energy hub, she froze. The control panel was damaged, sparks arced across exposed circuits, and the main core hummed dangerously, threatening to overload. She swallowed hard. Improvisation was now a necessity, not a choice. Mara knelt, hands moving swiftly over the exposed machinery. She had no toolkit beyond what she carried in her utility belt. No backup engineers, no safety net. Just her hands, her wits, and her ability to improvise. The scout watched, scales glinting nervously. "Human, you are attempting the impossible," Mara smiled grimly. Impossible is just a challenge phrased wrong. She rerouted power from auxiliary lines, using spare conduits and conductive crystals harvested from the nearby terrain. Sparks flew, and a low hum vibrated through the floor. She could feel the Deathworlders observing, recording, judging. One mistake, one miscalculation, and the core would explode. Almost. "There," she muttered. Sweat dripped down her face. As she connected the final link, the core stabilized, humming steadily instead of threatening to erupt. Mara leaned back, gasping for breath. The scout exhaled, relief evident in the subtle dimming of its scales. "You succeeded. But this is only the first challenge. They do not test for survival alone. They test for courage, compassion, and judgment." Mara nodded, wiping grime from her face. "And we move to the next. No one is left behind." Suddenly, a piercing alarm echoed from the fleet above. Mara glanced up, heart sinking. One of the human ships had deployed smaller, drones descending like swarms of metallic insects. They hovered above the settlement, scanning, analyzing, evaluating every living being below. Asterisk. "They're measuring reactions now," the scout said, its voice trembling. "They determine value, not just skill." Mara's eyes narrowed. She couldn't allow the Caithari to panic. "Follow my lead. Trust me." She raised her hands and called out to the fleeing civilians. "Move to the energy hub. Stay calm. Follow us." The Caithari hesitated, their fear palpable, but Mara's human resolve was infectious. Slowly, they began moving under her guidance. Her mind calculated each path, avoiding heat, debris, and drone sensors. One child froze near a collapsing bridge. Mara sprinted, scooping the small Caithari up and darting back, narrowly avoiding falling beams. The scout followed, creating protective shields with its own energy field. As they reached relative safety, a sudden explosion rocked the settlement. Mara hit the ground instinctively. Debris rained down, cutting off their path back. The drones hovered closer, analyzing the structural damage. Mara realized the true nature of the first trial. It wasn't merely survival of the strongest, it was leadership, compassion, and adaptability under extreme pressure. The scout's eyes glinted. "You care for them, even when it is risky. This human trait, it confounds the Deathworlders." Asterisk. Mara's chest tightened. "It's called survival. Not just my survival, everyone's. That's what makes us human." A deep rumble shook the valley. From the eastern ridge, Mara glimpsed another group of human ships descending rapidly, more aggressive in appearance than the first. Unlike the observation drones, these vessels carried weapons, but they did not fire. Instead, they deployed environmental simulators, artificial storms, sudden heat bursts, and localized gravity fluctuations. The Caitharis scattered instinctively. Mara grabbed the scout, leaping over a sudden crack in the earth, caused by a shifting storm. The ground split with a roar, sending dust and debris into the air. Why? Why torment them? The scout shouted, struggling to maintain balance. Asterisk. They are testing every variable, Mara said, landing hard. Every emotional response, every instinct, every decision. They need to know if this species, any species, can survive their judgment. Mara's eyes fell on a damaged bridge linking two halves of the settlement. The bridge trembled as molten metal pooled beneath. Civilians were stranded on both sides. She took a deep breath. "I'll go first," she said, tightening the straps on her utility harness. "If I can hold this, they'll see we can adapt." The Scout's scales dimmed in worry. "You risk yourself for them?" Mara gritted her teeth. "I risk myself because someone has to. Because we all survive together, or we all fail. That's human ingenuity." With that, she sprinted across the trembling bridge, using makeshift grappling hooks and harness lines to stabilize sections as she went. Sparks flew where metal snapped under pressure, but Mara pressed on, every movement precise, every breath controlled. Behind her, the Scout mimicked her improvisations, using its energy field to secure fragile segments of the bridge. The Kai-Thare followed, hesitant but encouraged by the combined human and Scout leadership. Halfway across, a sudden shockwave from one of the human environmental simulators nearly threw Mara off balance. She tumbled, heart racing, but managed to catch herself, pulling the harness tight. "Keep moving," she shouted. "Don't look down, look forward." Finally, they reached the other side. The Kai-Thare collapsed, exhausted but alive. Mara fell beside them, breathing heavily, adrenaline still coursing. From above, the human fleet observed silently. No applause, no cheers. Only the low hum of evaluation. The Scout finally exhaled. You have passed the first trial." But the Deathworlders do not stop. Their trials are not about victory. They are about proving worth. Mara's eyes narrowed, determination hardening. "Then we prepare for the next. Whatever it is, we survive. Together." Suddenly, a shadow fell. Across the valley, Mara looked up and froze. A massive human dreadnought descended, larger than any she had seen before. Its hull shimmered with adaptive armor, and weapons arrays moved with eerie precision. The Scout hissed. This is the final assessment for today. Only one human. And you will decide the outcome." Mara swallowed hard. "Then we. Show them the human way. Ingenuity, compassion, resolve." A deafening hum filled the valley as the dreadnought systems powered up. The first real test of fire and judgment was about to begin. Asterisk. The dreadnought's choice, the human dreadnought, hung above the valley like a god made of steel and light, its hull humming with energy that made the very air quiver. Mara Quinn squinted against the brilliance, calculating every possible threat. The Kai-Thare behind her were exhausted, trembling, unsure whether to run or obey. The Scout's voice trembled. "This is unprecedented. Never have the Deathworlders tested so many variables at once. You must act carefully." Mara tightened her jaw. Careful is good, but decisive is better. The dreadnought's hatch opened slowly, revealing a platform as large as a city block. A human figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing adaptive armor that glimmered like liquid metal. Every movement was precise, purposeful. Mara felt the weight of 1,000 human legends behind that single presence. The figure spoke, voice resonant and clear across the valley. "Lieutenant Mara Quinn, you have led. You have preserved life. You have adapted under impossible conditions. But now, the true test begins." Mara swallowed hard. "And what is that?" The figure raised one hand, and the dreadnought's hum intensified. Mara felt a low-frequency vibration travel through the ground, rattling the valley. "Survival," the human said simply. "But survival is not given. It is earned. You must choose Protect the Kai-Thari at all costs, or secure a means of survival for yourself, and leave the rest to chance. Mara's stomach twisted. She had faced impossible odds before, but this was an ethical knife edge. Every instinct, every human value screamed to protect the innocent, yet the Deathworlders' evaluation left no room for error. The scout hissed sharply. They are observing your choice, your priorities. This will define humanity in their judgment. Mara scanned the valley. The Kai-Thari settlement lay half in ruin, flames licking the crystalline towers. Civilians were trapped on unstable platforms, the bridge they had crossed barely holding. Every moment counted. Her hands clenched. Then we don't leave anyone behind, she muttered. We fix this together. Using scraps of energy from the damaged hub, Mara rigged temporary stabilizers across the collapsing structures. Sparks flew as she welded and connected makeshift conduits, her fingers raw and blistered. The scout hovered, providing an energy shield to prevent molten debris from incinerating them. The human dreadnought observed silently, its sensors scanning each connection, each action, recording, evaluating. A sudden rumble split the valley. One of the Kai-Thari towers, weakened by fire, began to topple toward the civilians. Mara leaped into action, gripping a support beam and using a pulley system of cables to redirect the falling structure. Her arms shook with strain, but she held on, forcing the tower away from the trapped Cathari. The scout gasped. Incredible. Your ingenuity, your resolve. It is human. Mara gritted her teeth, sweat streaming down her face. It's called survival. Not for me, for everyone. From the dreadnought above, a low beam of green energy shot toward the valley. Mara flinched, but it did not strike her or the Kai-Thari. Instead, it scanned the improvised stabilizers, recording the connections, evaluating their effectiveness, and calculating structural integrity. They measure innovation. The scout whispered, every solution, every decision, it's being weighed against survival standards. Mara's heart pounded. Every move had to be flawless. One miscalculation, and countless lives could be lost, and humanity's reputation with the Deathworlders could crumble before it was even fully assessed. Then, without warning, the bridge that connected the valley's halves trembled violently. Debris rained down, blocking several escape routes. Mara instinctively grabbed the nearest Kai-Thari child and ducked behind a stabilizing pillar. The scout reinforced her position with a protective energy field, shielding them from collapsing metal and molten sparks. The human figure observed, silent and unwavering. Finally, it spoke. This is the measure of your worth. Under extreme pressure, with limited resources, and the lives of others in your hands. What do you choose? Mara's eyes hardened. I choose to lead, to protect, to survive together. She leaped from the pillar, directing Kai-Thari civilians across safe paths, improvising with metal shards and energy cables to create temporary walkways. Sparks flew. Molten metal hissed where her makeshift channels redirected heat safely. The scout marveled at her speed, precision, and ingenuity. A sudden explosion erupted near the settlement's edge. Mara ducked instinctively, realizing the fire had spread unpredictably. Her mind raced. No single action could solve everything, but multiple solutions in parallel could. Move. Now, she shouted. Kai-Thari civilians obeyed, trusting the humans' experience over their own instincts. The dreadnought's sensors focused. Mara felt an almost tangible pressure, as if the Deathworlders themselves were weighing her soul. Every action, every decision, every spark of compassion was recorded. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the valley in violet and gold, the fires began to subside. Mara, bruised and scorched, stood atop a stabilized platform. The Kai-Thari civilians were safe for now, The human figure's voice echoed across the valley. "You have demonstrated innovation, courage, and compassion. These are the traits we value. But your judgment is not over. There is more to test, and the galaxy is watching." Mara's breath caught. "More?" A low hum reverberated through the valley as other dreadnoughts shifted position. The first true threat had appeared, a second wave of assessment, combining both natural disasters simulated by human technology and subtle moral dilemmas engineered to test alliances between species. The scout's eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and admiration. They are relentless. And yet you continue." Mara clenched her fists, staring at the human dreadnought above. "Relentless is human, too," she muttered. "And we will not fail. Not while we can act, not while there is life to save." From the shadowed ridges, Mara glimpsed movement. Caithari warriors, unsure whether to assist or flee. The test was escalating, and the Deathworlders' judgment was imminent. One wrong decision could doom everything, but she had learned that survival demanded risk. Ingenuity and trust. The trial of trust the valley had quieted, but the tension was far from over. Mara Quinn stood among the Caithari civilians, chest heaving, soot streaked across her face, and her hands still trembling from the exertion of the first trial. The human dreadnoughts hovered silently above, their presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The scout beside her flickered nervously, its scales dimmed in anxious anticipation. Human. They will not stop. The first trial is only the beginning. What comes next tests alliances, not just skill. Mara nodded grimly. She had learned to expect the unexpected, and in this galaxy, human ingenuity often meant turning impossible odds into survival. But she sensed something deeper, now something almost personal. The Deathworlders were testing more than ability. They were testing trust. From the massive dreadnought above, a low hum resonated through the valley. Mara felt it in her bones, a vibration that carried information she couldn't fully process, as if the machines themselves were alive and aware. Then a projection flickered into existence. A human figure, larger than life, eyes piercing, voice calm yet commanding. "You have saved lives and stabilized structures," the figure said. "But survival is not guaranteed by strength alone. Trust is the currency of species who endure. You must now demonstrate it." Mara frowned. "Trust? With whom?" The projection's gaze swept across the valley. "With allies. With the Caithari. With the very species you have struggled to protect. Decisions made now will reveal your character and the character of humanity." From the shadows, Caithari warriors stepped forward. They had recovered from the chaos, but were wary, uncertain whether to obey Mara or act in their own interests. Some whispered among themselves, eyes flicking nervously toward the hovering human fleet. Mara took a deep breath. "Listen," she said firmly, addressing both the Caithari and the scout. "We survive together, or we fail alone. No one moves without coordination. Follow my lead. Trust me, and I will trust you." The scout's scales brightened in approval. "Human, that is the essence. The Deathworlders are watching." Suddenly, a tremor shook the valley. A secondary wave of environmental simulation struck a controlled storm engineered by the human fleet, complete with artificial wind, lightning, and shifting terrain. Structures creaked. Debris fell from weakened buildings. Mara's mind raced. The Caithari were panicking. She had to act fast. Form groups, pair up, keep civilians together. Follow the paths I mark. She used glowing crystal markers to indicate safe routes. Her hands shook, but her voice remained firm. Every decision counted. Every hesitation could spell disaster. From the east, a new challenge emerged. A fractured ridge blocked the main escape route. The Caithari on the other side froze, unable to cross. Mara scanned the debris, improvising. Using cables, metal beams, and fragments of destroyed energy conduits, she created a makeshift bridge. The first Caithari group crossed cautiously. One slipped, screaming, but Mara's arm shot out, catching the alien just before they fell into molten terrain below. The scout assisted, projecting a brief energy shield. "Trust," Mara muttered, catching her breath. "Trust is everything." The human projection's voice rang out again. Observation. Human demonstrates leadership under stress, prioritizes life of others over self-preservation, and maintains cohesion across species barriers. But the final component of trust is reciprocity. Mara frowned. Reciprocity? A sudden scream split the air. From the rear, a smaller group of Caithari had panicked, retreating toward unstable terrain. Behind them, molten streams and collapsing cliffs threatened to cut them off entirely. Mara ran. "Hold your ground. Don't split," she shouted. But they hesitated. Fear had clouded reason. The human projection added, "You cannot control all. Trust must be mutual. Your allies must choose to follow, and their trust will define the outcome." Mara's eyes narrowed. She realized this was the ultimate test, not just survival, but convincing others to follow a human's lead under existential pressure. She sprinted forward, risking herself between the panicking Caithari and the molten hazards. "Follow me," she shouted, her voice rising above the roaring storm. "I will not abandon you. Trust me." Slowly, the Caithari warriors and civilians began moving as one. Mara's heart pounded. This moment, their willingness to rely on a human was the pivot of the trial. She felt a flicker of hope, but knew the Deathworlders' evaluation was far from over. From above, the dreadnought deployed. Small drone-like scouts scanning the group. They hovered close, probing, testing reactions. Mara realized the drones were not only measuring physical actions, they were measuring emotional responses, reading the subtle cues of leadership, fear, and trust. A sudden roar shook the valley. Mara froze. From the shadows of a nearby ridge, a band of Caithari extremists emerged, armed with energy weapons. They had seen the humans as invaders and intended to strike while chaos reigned. "Ambush!" Mara shouted, diving toward the nearest civilian and pulling them out of the line of fire. She fired her sidearm, disabling energy weapons with precision. The scout joined in, neutralizing threats with energy pulses rather than lethal force. Extremists hesitated, recognizing Mara's resolve and the protective energy field of the scout. Slowly, they lowered their weapons. The human fleet above recorded every action, scanning for subtle leadership decisions. Mara exhaled, adrenaline surging. "Trust works both ways," she muttered, "even among enemies." The human projection's voice finally spoke with approval. Humanity has demonstrated ingenuity, courage, compassion, and the ability to forge trust across species, even under extreme threat. Observation complete. Judgment pending further. Assessment. Mara looked around. The valley was scarred, the Caithari shaken, yet alive. The first real test of trust had passed, but she knew the Deathworlders' trials were far from over. The scout leaned close. "You have proven much, but their next evaluation will test you differently: strategy, ethics, and the ability to influence events without direct control. They will see if humanity can survive not just disaster, but moral dilemma." Mara clenched her fists. "Then we prepare. Whatever they throw next, we face it together. Caithari, human, scout, we survive together. That's how we prove our worth." Suddenly, from the distant horizon, a shadow grew, a massive formation of human ships, larger and more numerous than the first wave. Their engines pulsed energy, rippling across the valley. The scout's scales dimmed in fear. They are coming, it whispered. The full fleet, and they bring the true judgment. Mara's jaw tightened. She looked at the Caithari behind her. Stay close. Trust me. Humanity's not done yet. The ground trembled again. The sky burned violet and gold as the Deathworlders' fleet fully descended, silent, powerful, and inexorable. Mara Quinn realized the trial was only just beginning, and failure was no longer an option. Asterisk the ultimate trial, the valley lay in tense silence, broken only by the low hum of the Deathworlders' fleet. Mara Quinn's body ached, her face streaked with soot and sweat, but she refused to sit. The Caithari civilians and warriors around her were exhausted, yet she could sense their growing trust in her leadership. That trust, she realized, was as crucial as any physical tool she had ever wielded. Above, the massive fleet shifted, forming an intricate pattern in the violet gold sky. Each human ship moved with precision that made the very air seem alive. Mara felt a weight settle in her chest. This was no longer about individual survival. It was about strategy, ethics, and the very essence of humanity. The scout beside her, trembling, whispered, "This is it. The final trial. The Deathworlders. They will test everything. Skill, morality, compassion, innovation. One mistake, and all you have done may be nullified." Mara swallowed, her gaze sweeping across the valley. Civilians were clinging to her. Every word, their eyes reflecting exhaustion, fear, and hope. She knew that their lives were now intertwined with her decisions. The responsibility was monumental, but it was the kind of challenge humans were forged to face. From the largest dreadnought above, a projection shimmered into life. The commanding human figure, eyes piercing, voice calm, yet resonant. "Quinn," it began, "you have demonstrated leadership, trust, and ingenuity under impossible conditions. But the ultimate trial is this. Can you navigate the impossible choice of survival, ethics, and consequence when all options carry risk?" Mara's pulse quickened. "Explain," she said, voice steady despite the tension. "Two paths lie before you," the projection continued. "One guarantees the survival of the Caithari at great personal risk to you. The other ensures your personal survival, but leaves the Caithari exposed to potential destruction. You must act. Your decision will be observed, measured, and recorded. It will define humanity in the eyes of the Deathworlders." Asterisk Mara froze for a heartbeat. The choice was excruciating, but her instincts screamed at her. Survival alone was meaningless if it came at the cost of others. Yet she knew that reckless self-sacrifice could doom everyone. Her eyes swept across the valley. Civilians trapped on unstable platforms. Caithari warriors exhausted and ready to follow orders blindly, and the scout beside her shimmering with uncertainty. She had seconds to decide. "Then we do both," Mara said suddenly, determination hardening her features. "We find a way to survive while protecting them. That's human ingenuity turning impossible odds into opportunity." The projection tilted its head. "Observation, daring, innovative, risk-taking, proceed." Mara sprang into action. She directed the Caithari warriors to create defensive barriers with remaining materials, while she and the scout rigged improvised energy conduits to stabilize critical structures. Sparks flew as they rerouted power from damaged systems, using energy pulses to create temporary shields over civilians. Above, human drones hovered silently, scanning every move. Mara felt the subtle pressure of judgment, her choices, reactions, and even her emotional signals are being recorded. Then, chaos erupted. A section of the ridge threatened to collapse entirely, cutting off one escape route. Mara grabbed a cable and swung across the chasm, securing a makeshift anchor on the other side. The scout assisted, projecting energy lines to stabilize the precarious bridge. The Kaithari civilians followed her lead, moving cautiously, trusting her judgment. Mara realized the Deathworlders weren't merely testing survival. They were testing her ability to inspire trust, orchestrate strategy, and innovate under extreme conditions. Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked violently. Lava-like energy began seeping from fissures in the valley floor. Mara's heart raced. This was the final environmental hazard of the trial. "We can't hold this," the scout hissed. "It will collapse." Mara's mind raced. Then an idea struck risky, almost suicidal. She directed the Kaithari to use debris and energy conduits to create a series of controlled collapses. Redirecting the molten energy into side channels, she improvised on the fly. Sparks flew, metal bent. The air vibrated with intense energy. Worked barely. The fissures stabilized, and civilians were safe. Mara collapsed to her knees, gasping, sweat and grime streaking her face. The scout hovered beside her, trembling, awe evident in its scales. They are observing everything," the scout whispered. "Every improvisation, every moral choice. Humanity, you are extraordinary." Above, the commanding human figure projected once more, voice echoing across the valley. "Lieutenant Mara Quinn, observation complete, judgment pending. You have demonstrated ingenuity under extreme pressure, leadership across species, the ability to inspire trust, and moral courage when all options carried risk. These are the qualities we honor. Humanity is not merely survival, it is resilience, compassion, and intellect intertwined." Mara's heart swelled. Relief and pride surged, but she knew the trial was never really over. The Deathworlders had only begun to measure humanity's potential. Yet, for the first time, she glimpsed what the legends had promised. Humans were not just survivors of Deathworlds. They were forces capable of shaping the fate of entire civilizations. Then, a low, resonant hum swept through the valley. The Deathworlders' fleet shifted, energy cascading like liquid metal across the sky. Mara felt the hum in her bones, a vibration that carried both approval and warning. The projection spoke one final time. "Humanity has been observed. Judgment is favorable for now. You have proven that even in the face of impossible choice, your species' ingenuity, compassion, and adaptability endure. But the galaxy is vast, and the trials you face will continue. Prepare, adapt, survive. Humanity has only begun to reveal its strength." Mara staggered to her feet, exhaustion heavy in every muscle. She looked around at the Kaithari, at the scout, at the valley scarred but intact. "We survived," she whispered. The scout's scales shimmered faintly. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. The Deathworlders do not act without reason. You have passed, but they are coming." Mara clenched her fists, resolve hardening. "Then we meet them head-on. Together. Kaithari, human, scout, we survive together. And we show them the power of humanity." The massive fleet above shifted, engines pulsing, a silent promise of trials yet to come. Mara's pulse quickened. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had only begun to speak its name. Asterisk. Humanity's reckoning, the violet gold sky over Zeref. 4 shimmered with the presence of the Deathworlders' fleet. Each ship moved with perfect coordination, engines humming like living beings. Mara Quinn stood atop a ridge, surveying the valley below. The Kaithari were battered, but alive. There. Trust in her unbroken. The scout hovered beside her, scales glimmering faintly in relief. "Human," the scout said softly. You have passed their tests. But this is not over. They will assess the galaxy itself next." Mara exhaled, rubbing the grime from her face. "And we're not going to wait for them to decide. We act first. Humanity doesn't survive by hiding." From the sky, The commanding human figure's projection shimmered into view. Mara Quinn, you have proven ingenuity, leadership, and moral courage. The assessment is complete. Humanity's actions indicate a species capable of shaping galactic outcomes. Your allies and the Caithari have been observed, and their willingness to cooperate further underscores your species' unique potential. But judgment is not a static decree. You may now influence the outcome. Mara's heart raced. Influence? How? By example, the projection replied. By demonstrating that cooperation, trust, and innovation create outcomes even the most advanced civilizations cannot predict. Show us the galaxy your ingenuity and compassion can protect, and we may extend humanity's role beyond survival to leadership. Mara nodded, determination hardening. She turned to the Caithari. We have survived trials, tests, and chaos. But the Deathworlders aren't here to destroy us. They are here to measure what humanity can offer. We prove it not by hiding, not by submitting, but by acting with intelligence, courage, and compassion. The scout flickered in agreement. Human, your species, it is extraordinary. You do not merely endure, you knew it, inspire, lead. Mara scanned the valley. Fires had been controlled, civilians were safe, and the remnants of the Caithari military were rallying to help stabilize the settlement further. She realized the opportunity before her. The Deathworlders measured potential, not just performance. If she could coordinate an unprecedented act of ingenuity and unity, she could alter how they perceive not just her, but humanity itself. Listen, Mara shouted, gathering Caithari leaders. We're going to show them something no species has ever demonstrated before: collaboration on a scale they cannot ignore. Engineers, warriors, civilians, everyone has a role. Together, we stabilize the settlement completely and create a signal beacon using Zerath-Fi's energy grid to demonstrate coordination across species. We'll prove that humans and their allies can create solutions greater than the sum of their parts. The Caithari hesitated, then, inspired by Mara's determination, began moving. Engineers rerouted power lines, warriors reinforced structures, and civilians assisted where they could. Mara coordinated with precision, improvising in real time as human ingenuity and Caithari technology merged into a seamless, adaptive system. Above, the Deathworlders' fleet observed. Drones scanned the activity, analyzing every detail. Mara realized that they were not merely recording, they were learning. Every improvisation, every act of leadership, every demonstration of trust and compassion contributed to a grand evaluation of humanity's potential. Hours passed in a blur of movement, ingenuity, and quiet tension. Finally, Mara activated the energy beacon. Light cascaded into the sky, a radiant signal of unity, ingenuity, and resilience. The Deathworlders' fleet paused, engines vibrating in resonance. The commanding figure projected once more. Observation. Humanity demonstrates unprecedented integration of skill, trust, and ingenuity. Not only have you preserved life, but you have elevated cooperation to a level we did not anticipate. Humanity is extraordinary. The galaxy may yet rely upon your species not only for survival, but for leadership and innovation. Mara's chest swelled. Exhaustion, relief, and pride collided. She looked at the Caithari and the scout. We did it, she whispered. Together. The fleet shifted, engines pulsing with silent approval. Slowly, one by one, the human dreadnoughts rose into orbit, forming a protective perimeter around the planet. The message was clear. Humanity's ingenuity, compassion, and leadership had been recognized, and the Deathworlders would not interfere destructively, at least for now. The scout hovered beside Mara, glimmering. You have done what no one thought possible. You have proven the value of humanity in the galaxy. Mara allowed herself a small smile. "No," she said, looking out at the valley. "We have all done it. Humans, Caithari, scouts. Together. That's what makes us strong." From orbit, the human fleet transmitted a final message, clear across the galaxy, a signal of hope, warning, and demonstration of unity. The Deathworlders had arrived expecting rescue, expecting chaos, but humanity had turned the trial into a demonstration of compassion, ingenuity, and adaptability. As the sun dipped below Zireth Ivy's horizon, painting the sky in violet and gold, Mara Quinn knew this was only the beginning. The Deathworlders had measured, judged, and observed, but the galaxy itself would now know humanity's true value. Asterisk, she turned to the scout, then the Caithari. "The trials aren't over," she said. "But whatever comes next, we face it together, and the galaxy will see what humans are truly capable of." Above them, the Deathworlders' fleet began to ascend, leaving Zireth the Fourth alive, intact and unified under the proof of human ingenuity. The first battle of perception had been won, but the future of the galaxy, and humanity's role within it, had only begun to unfold. Asterisk. Ending. Humanity had survived the Deathworlders' judgment, not by brute force, but through compassion, ingenuity, and trust. All eyes across species had been inspired, and the galaxy now knew that the Deathworlders, though terrifying, were not beyond influence. Mara Quinn looked to the stars, heart steady. Humanity's story was just beginning. Asterisk.